Are we asking the right questions in our aquariums? So often in the chat and just talking with people, I can tell that they're like attacking the problem from the wrong way. And what I've learned is that's half of the battle or more. Is, are we even asking the right question? I'm solving for something that might be incorrect. I know I struggle with that, or I did struggle, still am, working on it. And so I've taken a couple questions that we're going to work through them, I guess. That's what we're going to do. And hopefully everybody will kind of maybe learn something, maybe about the exact problem, maybe going, hey, I have that problem too. Or maybe like, wait, well, I got a problem going on. Am I thinking about it from the right angle? So first one I've got up, they swapped out a bunch of plants, maybe all of them, I don't know. A bunch of plants got swapped out in their tank, and then all of their cherry shrimp died. They've done a bunch of water changes. They've bought new shrimp. They died. They've tested everything. I've done all the things, right? And so the first thing I start with is when you've had success with something, and then now you're not, you know it's at least achievable. And what I mean by that is, if this tank was producing cherry shrimp and working, you know your skill set and whatever, it's at least achievable. Whereas if you've never kept shrimp before, you could kill them and maybe it's you that's the problem, right? So we at least know that this tank at one time could do it, right? And so the question is, how do I fix it? And I think that's the wrong question to ask. I think the right question, or one question I might ask is, what have I done to break what was working? You know, if you've ever been in tech before, you know, maybe you work on computers, or, you know, you're solving problems. A lot of times you become the computer guy at your office, even if you're not the tech person, because you can solve a problem. And so one of the biggest things you learn is, what did we change? This worked yesterday, it's not working today. You know, did you click on a setting? Did you do something? I think we need to ask, what did we change? We swapped out all the plants. So that's where I would start. I would go, okay, what are the things that could happen? We could put new plants in, and maybe they come in with some chemical that kills everything, right? They could swap out a bunch of plants and disrupt the cycle. Or disrupt, not the cycle, the balance of the tank, right? If the plants, let's say, were eating the lion's share of waste and converting it and doing its job, and then we rip that out, we put new plants in, it takes at least a week, if not two, to start replacing that. Now, we could have taken out plants this big and put in plants this small. Maybe it's a one-to-one swap. We don't have all the information there, but we know there's been a big disruption. And so that's where I think the problem started and amplifies. Now, what does that amplify? What do you mean amplifies? Well, we kind of went into a problem. And I'm going to take this back to like computers. You went to print today, it won't print, right? Printed yesterday, just printed yesterday, or printed earlier, before lunch. What's going on? So then you start messing with settings, right? You change this, let me update the driver, let me try this, let me try the old printer, let me do this, let me do that. Pretty soon, you're like 5 or 6 steps deep into a problem that is now way harder to solve. And that's what happened here with these cherry shrimp. We swapped out a bunch of plants, then we did a ton of water changes, and we're chasing things. And what we know about fish and aquariums really is that they like stability, especially shrimp. Shrimp thrive in stability. And so when we go with one major change, we get that die off, change a bunch of water, bring in new shrimp. They're not used to that. They die, change a bunch of water. We're in a cycle now of nothing is stable. And so really what we need to do is step back and go, okay, what was working? Working was plants were growing, shrimp were breeding, I was feeding, I had this schedule. When you start changing those things, that's where you get results you can't predict. And so the first thing I do when I suffer a big setback, think about what did I do that was different, and how do I get back to where it was? And sometimes I don't like the answer of like, yeah, I hadn't gravel vacuumed in like 2 years. I just did a thorough cleaning. Oh, it's probably just going to take time. Maybe I'm 6 months away from getting back to a filled substrate that's going to harbor infusoria and microcrustaceans and other little organisms that these are going to help cohabitate with the shrimp. And I just have to wait, right? But I don't think there is the answer that we're all searching for in that scenario of like, okay, but what's the thing so I can go, hey, I'm going to add this. Like, yep, we just put a little bit of this in, and now I can add shrimp next week. Chances are we need to let those plants grow. We probably need to let the substrate settle back down. Every plant you lifted out really brought, like, if you don't know this, substrate stratifies, and that's a big word for it gets layers. And so maybe the first little layer is converting ammonia and stuff for you and doing everything you want. But then that second layer has less oxygen, and maybe it's like a great layer for fish poop and plant roots. Then you get down to another layer, and that there's no oxygen getting down there, and that's converting nitrates, right? Consuming them. But we kind of want plants to do that. You could get some gases building up. Like, there's things going on to each layer of this substrate. And when we take a plant out, wherever those roots were, and sometimes if you've ever taken out a big plant, they go the whole tank. But you're basically mixing it up, right? So you might be taking outside, you have this compact substrate, you dig it up, and when you put it back, it's more fluffy. It's like you have more than when you started with, and it's different. And when you step on it, it compresses, and it gets muddy faster. We've changed the properties of that ground. And that can happen in our aquarium too, especially when we have organisms that want to live on that and work inside of that, breed inside of that. We need plants to utilize that. So what did we change? How do we get back to before the change? That's what I would be focusing on, and knowing it's a slow road and probably not very quick. Even though we achieve success, usually in our lives, it's easier to achieve success again, but it's not instant, right? If I built my first home and it took me 4 years, maybe when I build a second home, it takes me 2 years, but it's not like, well, I could bang that out in a month. It's still a long process. You might get better at it each time, and that's eventually you do it enough and you own a store. I've killed so many shrimp. I've done so many things that I can advise other people on how to dodge the problems that I've been having.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. To watch another one just like this, click here.